Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, really dig into the details, and, bring you the critical insights from stories shaping our world. Today, we're diving deep into a legal showdown happening right now in India. It's got huge implications for what we all see and maybe what we don't see online. It's a pretty compelling story, actually. Big tech versus government authority, and it's playing out in court with some, well, let's just say some memorable exchanges. Our mission today is to unpack this whole complex dispute. It's X Corp challenging the Indian government's power to order content takedowns. We're going to pull out the key things you need to know and show you exactly why this matters to, well, pretty much anyone using the internet today. We definitely found some surprising stuff digging into this.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because this one case, it's currently before the Karnataka High Court. It isn't just about, one specific video or platform. It's really a window into these much larger global trends around online freedom, government control, digital regulation, all of that. We'll explore the specific arguments, the history that got us here, and the potential ripple effects this could have. I mean, this is one of the world's biggest internet markets we're talking about. It really forces us to think about, the balance of power in this digital age.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. The spark that really lit this legal fire, it seems to center on a specific video, just a short clip apparently, showing a woman driving her car on railway tracks in Hyderabad. You can immediately see why that would raise some flags for authorities, right? Public safety, maybe even public order concerns.
Absolutely.
So, this video gets noticed by the Ministry of Railways. They issue a takedown order straight to X Corp, demanding it gets removed quickly. But here's where it gets interesting. X Corp didn't just comply. Instead, on July 1st, 2025, they went straight to the Karnataka High Court and challenged the order directly. That seems like a big step, not just routine moderation. So why? Why did they push back so hard this time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And X-Corp's core argument, when they really pushed hard in court, wasn't actually about the video's content per se. It was about who gets to issue these orders. Their stance is, look, these directives should only come from properly authorized entities following specific procedures, not just any government officer. And this led to that moment that got a lot of attention. Their representative actually said in court something like, Tom, Dick, and Harry can't issue takedown orders.
Right.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, that specific phrase really drew sharp criticism from the government side. It instantly cranked up the tension and made this a very high-profile, very combative legal fight.
Right.
It really highlighted this clash over perceived government overreach, or at least a lack of clear process.
Right. The courtroom atmosphere must have been pretty charged. It sounds less like a dry legal hearing and more like, I don't know, a digital duel
You could say that.
with legal briefs instead of fists, obviously.
Right.
But what were the underlying stakes here beyond just that one video? Why was the tension so high for both X Corp and the government?
Well, fundamentally, this isn't just about one clip. It's about who controls the flow of information online. That's the real core of it. For X Corp, it's about defending their operational independence and, what they see as protecting user speech from arbitrary government actions. For the government, it's about asserting their right, their sovereign authority to maintain order and security within India's digital space. That Tom, Dick, and Harry comment, while maybe a bit provocative, it cut right to X Corp's worry about getting all these fragmented, maybe uncoordinated orders hitting their platform. It's fundamentally a clash over how you interpret legal authority in the digital sphere.
Okay, so to really get this, we need to dig into the legal weeds a bit. The battleground is India's Information Technology Act, the IT Act from 2000. And specifically, two sections seem absolutely crucial here, Section 79 and Section 69A. These aren't just numbers. They represent pretty different ways to handle online content, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Section 79 is what's often called the safe harbor provision. Now, most people following digital regulation will know this kind of thing. It generally protects intermediaries, platforms like X Corp, from being liable for what users post. Yeah. Unless, and this is the key part, unless they're properly notified about unlawful content and then fail to act. Specifically, Section 79 3B says if an intermediary gets notified, if they have actual knowledge or the government tells them about unlawful content, they have to take it down or disable access promptly. This is meant to make platforms act on genuinely illegal stuff once flagged without making them responsible for everything users post.
Okay, that's Section 79. Then there's Section 69A. This was added later in 2008. And this sounds more like the government's direct power switch, the big red button, as you called it earlier.
Sort of, yeah. It gives the central government specific powers to block public access to online information. but it's meant for serious situations, threats to national security, public order, sovereignty, inciting serious crimes, that kind of thing.
And crucially, Section 69A has procedural safeguards built in.
That's right. It requires written reasons for blocking orders. It often provides for a hearing. There's a process, a degree of due process involved.
So how does X Corp connect these two? How do they argue the government is sort of sidestepping 69A?
Okay, this is where their legal strategy really comes into view. X Corp argues the government is essentially misusing Section 793B. Remember, that's the part about liability for not acting on known unlawful content. They claim the government is using this as a shortcut, a way to bypass the stricter, more procedurally demanding requirements of Section 69A. They're saying government bodies are issuing these takedown demands as simple notifications under 793B, specifically to avoid having to provide written reasons or hold hearings, like Section 69A requires. It boils down to demanding that content blocking follows established, transparent legal paths, not arbitrary orders. They're basically saying, use the right law for the job and follow its rules.
Right. Okay, let's picture the scene back in the Karnataka High Court on July 1st. How did this specific argument play out? X-Corp's lawyer, senior advocate KG Raghavan, directly questioned if individual government officers even had the legal power to issue these orders under 793B. He really hammered the point about the lack of safeguards, didn't he? Saying, what if every Tom, Dick, and Harry officer sends me notices? See how this is being misused? That's quite direct.
Very direct. And the government's response, through Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, was equally firm. He insisted these officers aren't just random people, they're statutory functionaries acting with full legal authority under Indian law. And his point was, platforms operating in India simply must comply with Indian laws, period. The court, Justice M. Nagaprasanna, also jumped in on the phrasing, objecting to the Tom, Dick, and Harry language, reminding everyone that these officers represent the Union of India. It was a clear signal from the judge about respecting the institutions, even in a heated argument.
Interesting. And there was another player trying to get involved too, some digital media publishers.
Yeah, that's right. An association representing digital media publishers. Their lawyer was senior advocate Aditya Sondi.
Yeah.
They tried to intervene. They wanted to support X Corp's case.
But the government objected.
They did. The center objected to their involvement. You could almost read it as them saying, look, X is a big, capable international company. They don't need backup. But in the end, the court did allow X Corp to amend its petition. They can now include other union ministries, which could potentially widen the whole case, bringing in other government departments that might be issuing similar orders.
So all this back and forth, the arguments, the interventions, it really sets things up for the next hearing, doesn't it? Scheduled for July 8th.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It feels like waiting for the next episode, really. Huge questions about power, process, and online speech are just hanging in the balance. Every single move here is being watched incredibly closely because the implications are, well, they're massive, much bigger than just this one company or this one video.
Yeah, and this specific case, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, does it? It's part of a much longer story playing out in India's digital space. We've seen these kinds of tensions before. I mean, the big one that comes to mind is the Shreya Singhal ruling back in 2015.
A landmark case, absolutely.
That ruling struck down Section 66A of the IT Act, another controversial section known for being vague and easily misused. And didn't that ruling specifically say that content blocking must follow Section 69A's rules or come from a court order? It really emphasized due process.
Precisely. It set a very strong precedent about the need for procedural safeguards when restricting online speech. It basically drew a clear line in the sand. And if you zoom out a bit more, you see this isn't even X Corp's first recent challenge on this exact point. They actually sued the government back in March 2025 over very similar issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were challenging the use of Section 79(3)(b then too, and even a specific government portal called Sahyog used for issuing blocking orders. Again, the argument was the same. These methods bypass proper legal safeguards. And interestingly, that earlier case also had a hearing on July 1st.
So this is clearly an ongoing strategic effort by X Corp.
It certainly looks that way. A concerted series of legal challenges aimed at clarifying or maybe reshaping the government's powers in this area.
And like you said earlier, this isn't just happening in India. We see similar struggles globally, right? Platforms versus governments over content moderation.
Definitely. Especially around sensitive times like elections or major social events. Governments everywhere are trying to exert more control over online platforms. And platforms are pushing back, usually citing free speech principles and the need for clear, consistent rules. The specific laws differ, But that core tension, it's global.
But the scale in India seems notable.
It really is. Just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Between March 2024 and March 2025, just 1 year, the Indian government reportedly issued 11,132 takedown orders specifically to X.
Wow, over 1,000.
Yeah. And what's even more striking is that apparently 50%, half of those orders, cited something called public mischief.
Public mischief, that sounds broad.
It is broad and potentially very subjective, which raises obvious concerns about how it might be applied. You know, it puts platforms in a really tough spot dealing with that kind of volume and that kind of justification.
So let's bring it back home. What does all this mean for the average internet user in India, for the future of online free speech there? People are calling this a battle for the soul of India's internet. Is that hyperbole?
I don't think it's hyperbole, actually. The stakes are incredibly high. Look, if X Corp wins this case, it could seriously limit the government's ability to issue these kinds of quick Section 793B takedown orders. That would likely mean a more open internet because it reinforces that only authorized bodies, following clear rules like those in 69A, can block content. A win for X could also encourage other platforms to challenge similar orders. You might see less arbitrary censorship. Most legal experts we've seen comment on this tend to agree with X Corp's core argument about process. They keep saying the government has to follow its own laws, follow due process.
Okay, but what about the flip side? What if the government wins?
Well, a government victory could definitely embolden them. We might see even more takedown orders under Section 79(3)(b. And the big concern there is the potential chilling effect on speech. Platforms might start removing content preemptively just to avoid legal battles.
Playing it safe, basically.
Exactly. Playing it safe rather than risking a fight. And that leads down a slippery slope where platforms become sort of reluctant censors just to avoid liability. That's the fear.
It really highlights this incredibly difficult balance, doesn't it, between legitimate government needs national security, public safety, and protecting freedom of expression online.
It's a critical balance. And this case goes right to the heart of fundamental constitutional rights in India, particularly Article 19(1) on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
The outcome here won't just affect X. It will shape India's entire digital environment. It affects all platforms, and ultimately it affects what information you, as a user, can access and share online. It really is a defining moment.
So as we look towards that next hearing on July 8th, it's crystal clear this is way more than just a minor legal spat over a video. It feels like a truly pivotal moment, one that could set precedents influencing free expression, not just in India, but potentially how this is handled globally.
Absolutely. We've seen how one single incident, that one video clip, spiraled into this huge discussion, tying together complex laws, key historical cases, and these big global dynamics. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that understanding what's happening is crucial, but understanding why it matters and what the potential consequences are for our daily lives, for the information we rely on, that's where the real value lies.
And that really leaves us with something important for you, our listeners, to think about. In this age where information moves instantly, where governments everywhere are trying to figure out how to regulate these incredibly powerful online platforms, what role do you think platforms should ultimately play? How should they balance user freedom against national interests? And maybe just as importantly, how much transparency should we demand in the processes that decide what information stays online and what simply disappears? Definitely something worth mulling over.